Today, we're diving into the exciting world of commands, requests, invitations, advice, and suggestions. These forms of communication are like the secret ingredients that spice up our daily interactions, whether we're asking for a favor, giving instructions, or offering guidance. In this video, we'll explore the various ways to express these ideas in English, from the most casual to the most formal. It's like having a language toolkit that you can use to communicate more effectively and confidently in any situation. By mastering these linguistic tools, you'll be able to navigate the complexities of everyday communication with ease and finesse. So, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's unravel the mysteries of these essential forms of communication together. It's time to become language superheroes and conquer the world of commands, requests, invitations, advice, and suggestions. Commands, the imperative superpower. First, let's talk about the most direct way to give a command, the imperative. In English, the imperative is like a linguistic superpower that allows you to take charge and make things happen. It's the same form as the bare infinitive, which means it's just the base form of the verb without to. For example, you might say, stop, wait, listen carefully. It's like you're the superhero of the sentence, directing the action with a single word. To make a negative command, simply add do not or don't before the verb. It's like using your powers for good, telling someone what not to do. For instance, don't stop, don't forget your umbrella. You can also add emphasis to a command by placing do before the verb. It's like putting on your superhero cape and making your voice heard. For example, do hurry up. Do be quiet. Keep in mind that using you in a command can sound rude, so it's best to omit it unless you want to make a distinction or be intentionally impolite. It's like using your powers responsibly and considering the feelings of others. For first-person commands, we use let us or let's, followed by the bare infinitive. It's like inviting others to join you on your superhero mission. For example, let's go to the movies tonight. Let us pray for peace. And for third-person commands, although less common, you can use let him, her, it, them, followed by the bare infinitive. It's like directing your powers towards someone else, giving them a mission to accomplish. For instance, let them eat cake. Other ways to express commands. The formal force. Now, let's explore some alternative ways to express commands, especially in more formal or written contexts. These forms are like the sophisticated sidekicks of the imperative, adding a touch of elegance and authority to your commands. One option is to use shall for third-person commands, particularly in written instructions or regulations. It's like using your formal force to lay down the law. For example, employees shall wash their hands before returning to work. The treasurer shall submit a financial report at each meeting. Another formal way to give commands is to use will, implying a sense of authority and certainty of obedience. It's like using your powers to make sure things get done, no questions asked. For instance, passengers will fasten their seatbelts during takeoff and landing. You will report to the principal's office immediately. In some cases, commands can be expressed as obligations using must. It's like using your powers to enforce the rules and ensure compliance. For example, all visitors must sign in at the front desk. You must complete this assignment by Friday. Instructions can also be conveyed using the be plus infinitive construction. It's like using your formal force to guide others through a process step by step. For instance, you are to remain seated until the light turns off. The room is to be cleaned thoroughly before the guests arrive. And for written prohibitions, may not is a common choice. It's like using your powers to set boundaries and establish limitations. For example, students may not use their phones during class. Guests may not bring outside food or beverages into the theater. Requests with can, could, may, might. The polite propositioners. Let's move on to making requests, which are generally more polite than commands. These forms are like the gentle persuaders of the language world, using their powers to ask for things nicely. One way to make a request is by using can, could, may, or might, followed by I, we, and a verb. It's like using your powers to propose a course of action or ask for permission. For example, can I borrow your pen? Informal. Could we have a menu, please? More polite. May I speak with the manager? More formal. Might I trouble you for a glass of water? Very formal. Note that could is the most versatile and commonly used form for requests. It's like the Swiss Army knife of the request world, adaptable to any situation. You can make these requests even more tentative by adding phrases like, do you think, or I was wondering if, before them. It's like using your powers to soften the request and make it more open-ended. For instance, do you think I could leave work a bit early today? I was wondering if we might reschedule the meeting. When reporting these requests, we often use the verb ask, followed by for and the object. It's like using your powers to relay the request to someone else. For example, she asked for a glass of water. He asked to speak with the manager. Requests with could, will, would you, the considerate collaborators. Another way to make requests is by using could you, will you, or would you, followed by the verb and sometimes please. These forms are like the considerate collaborators of the request world, using their powers to propose a joint effort. For example, could you pass the salt, please? Would you mind opening the window? Will you help me carry these boxes? Note that would you is considered more polite than will you, which can sound more demanding. It's like using your powers to be extra courteous and respectful. You can also use would you mind, followed by a gerund, to make a polite request. It's like using your powers to ask for a favor in a gentle and unobtrusive way. For instance, would you mind keeping an eye on my bag while I'm gone? Would you mind speaking a bit more slowly? For more formal requests, you can use phrases like, would you be so kind as to, or I would be grateful if you could. It's like using your powers to elevate the request to a higher level of politeness and sophistication. For example, would you be so kind as to forward this email to the relevant department? I would be grateful if you could provide me with more information about the position. Sometimes I wish you would can be used to make a request, though it may imply a sense of frustration or that the other person should have already done the action. It's like using your powers to express a desire for change or improvement. For instance, I wish you would clean up your room without me having to ask. Invitations and advice, the social savants. Invitations are another form of communication that we use daily. These linguistic tools are like the social savants of the language world, using their powers to bring people together and create opportunities for connection. To invite someone, you can use will you or would you like, followed by the verb or noun. It's like using your powers to extend a warm and welcoming hand. For example, will you join us for dinner tonight? Would you like to go to the concert with me? Would you like a cup of coffee? To accept an invitation, you can say, I'd love to, or thank you, that would be great. It's like using your powers to express enthusiasm and gratitude. To politely decline, you can say, I'm sorry, I won't be able to make it, or thank you for the invitation, but I have other plans. It's like using your powers to graciously bow out while still acknowledging the kind gesture. When it comes to giving advice, there are several options. These forms are like the wise mentors of the language world, using their powers to guide others towards the best course of action. You can use modal verbs like must, ought to, or should. It's like using your powers to convey a strong sense of recommendation or necessity. For instance, you must try this new restaurant. The food is amazing. You ought to start saving for retirement as early as possible. You should get more sleep. It's important for your health. Another common way to give advice is to use the conditional, if I were you, I would. It's like using your powers to put yourself in the other person's shoes and offer a hypothetical solution. For example, if I were you, I'd talk to your boss about getting a raise. You can also use you had better, followed by a verb, to give strong advice. It's like using your powers to convey a sense of urgency or importance. For instance, you'd better study hard if you want to pass the exam. Suggestions. The idea innovators. Suggestions are a great way to offer ideas or propose potential plans. These linguistic tools are like the idea innovators of the language world, using their powers to inspire and motivate others to try new things. One common way to make a suggestion is to use let's, followed by a verb. It's like using your powers to invite others to join you on a fun and exciting adventure. For example, let's go to the beach this weekend. Let's order pizza for dinner, shall we? You can also use shall we or shall I to make suggestions. It's like using your powers to propose a course of action and gauge the other person's interest or willingness. For instance, shall we invite Mark to the party? Shall I book the tickets for the show? Another way to make suggestions is to use why don't we you or why not, followed by a verb or noun. It's like using your powers to challenge the status quo and encourage others to think outside the box. For example, why don't we try that new Thai restaurant? Why not take a cooking class together? Where should we go on vacation? Why not Hawaii? In casual conversations, you can also use what how about, followed by a gerund or noun to suggest an idea. It's like using your powers to throw out a fun and informal proposal. For instance, what about going for a hike this afternoon? How about a game of tennis? To suggest a hypothetical situation, you can use suppose, followed by a subject and a verb. It's like using your powers to create a mental scenario and explore its potential outcomes. For example, suppose we all chip in and buy Mom a nice gift for her birthday. Suppose you talk to your professor about getting an extension on the paper. When reporting suggestions, you can use the verbs suggest or propose, followed by a gerund or a that clause. It's like using your powers to relay the suggestion to someone else or document it for future reference. For instance, Tom suggests going to the movies tonight. Mary proposed that we have a potluck dinner next week.
Commands, requests, and invitations to advice.